Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I'm really excited to be here to celebrate Anna's chapbook release. So I know some of you know this because I see some Kelsey Street Press folks in the room, but Anna was one of my editors, my Kelsey Street Press editors, and it was such a lovely experience. It was a really it was like being in this collaborative conversation about the possibilities of poetry. And I think that Anna was very attentive to what, the ways a poem could stretch. And I'm really excited to hear the work from your chapbook later today. So very excited to support you in this reading. So I know that the chapbook centers and revolves around water. So I thought I would read some poems that touched on the theme of water for today. Spell for safe passage. For you who heard useless through the honey trees in time of wasp and stalk. For you who raised surface, generated an off-color milk. We all mixed from hunger, born from chemical cousins. For the train of mouths breathing a first bowl, you who haven't sat down for days waiting for fog and spice sky. I watch you weave them, bare grassy cane, tired body in shift and glitter. Would not wash out no matter how we found red, into whatever wore me, stolen a sheen of milk, memory, saw alone on the porch. To sleep and take up a branch of that country, to allow maps of fire, our own fields of rain. A lot of my work that revolves around water references living in Houston because it's a very watery city. And part of that experience was living through Hurricane Harvey. And so this, the next piece I'm gonna read is thinking about some of that experience. And it's in the form of a zuihitsu, which is a Japanese hybrid form, and uses fragmentation and juxtaposition to loosely follow the brush. And it seems like an ideal form to think about, like climate anxiety and grief and connection. And there's some phrases from Alexis Pauline Gumb's M Archive after the end of the world. And when I say those phrases, I'll just do this so you know that it belongs to Alexis, those words. My people, I see you across street, porch people, huddled under brick archway, watching what pours from sky. Waiting in water, what circuits it carries, mostly numb, small, what might feel like circuits end. Stay home, watch streets filling up and draining and filling up again. My neighbor with no shoes and an umbrella knock on doors to locate whose car in the street flooding up. He knocked on our door and another one, fleeting back, knocked a few minutes before and said, "Hi, I'm your neighbor." We miss what's been paved over, all branches holding down our dirt, keeping paths flowing away. A lake and library parking lot. Women calling to each other over and above it, heading to their free computer classes. My people of the flashing lights, pulsating throbs, carbon monoxide, methane, oxides of nitrogen. Cousins released 180,565 up into stream. 287,453 emissions. These are among us too, carried into our stories. If we would have only sung to find each other or taught ourselves to read the waves. If only grown resistant skin, hard-fired to stand through ravenous beetles, stripping off all trees, 33 trillion gallons. What slugs, what acoustic activities, swallowed and sat, stared down with glass eyes. Vow to share our 4 teaspoons of coffee, open back door at your knock, lend the orange cords, handheld pumps, small towels to slick off oil anomalies, watch for rising sheen and horizon, melting glacier, to remember its full and terrible man-eating weight, to walk through rain down boulders, singing lines of poetry to the bears, announcing, hey, hey, we are here, don't worry, nothing to see, nothing to eat. If I see you coming, I vow to slow down, walk step beside you, not leave you waiting through sluck, not leave you stacked chairs high for rescue. Hundreds climb silent up the highways, looking for more silence. I'm done with fleeing. Even as you walk beside me, I feared your ever-growing branches would wild out my own tin. I kept saying thank you, nice to pass and cross and leave taking. You waited for me, the only 2 large clumsies under a finally darkening midnight sky, saying hello again, hello. I vow an impossible hello. I want to read you, I've been reading, or I've been writing these gathas, which are Buddhist verses popularized by Thich Nhat Hanh. And I've been kind of thinking about different threads and thinking a lot about how to calm down, my anxious body and heart. And so this is one of the methods that I've been doing it. And so I've been writing kind of like these multiverse and voice poems, and kind of reading them differently depending on how I show up in the space. So I will read, I'll read the lines separately and then I'll read one final one together. And thank you for having me and for being such great listeners. Gatha for Forest Walk. Breathing in, notice breeze and sun in forest. Breathing out, name what I see in circle. Breathing in, see what's in motion. Breathing out, the water has transformed everything I pass. Breathing in, repetitions and variations in the leaves. Breathing out, can see where we belong to each other. When no father arrives. To light a fire in classic wall, to open up a tear in membrane. You do not need a velvet stomach. You do not need a taut line. Don't get stuck in cradle. Don't get lost along green. If you don't consider yourself same language, yet ask for that same patrol, yet desire that same protection, then combine my memory, shape the bone, ask the half-shut question. Gatha for Forest Walk, when no father arrives. Breathing in, notice to light a fire in classic wall. Breeze and sun in forest. Breathing out, name what I see in circle. To open up a tear in membrane. Breathing in, you do not need a velvet stomach. See what's in motion? You do not need a taut line. Breathing out, don't get stuck in cradle. The water has transformed, don't get lost along green. If you don't consider yourself same language, everything I pass, breathing in repetitions and variations in the leaves, yet desire that same protection, yet ask for that same patrol. Then combine my memory, breathing out, shape the bone, can see where, ask the half-shut question, we belong to each other. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much. I've got goosebumps. I don't think I'm alone on that either. This has been such a great reading. Thank you both so much for reading and supporting Anna and everybody here for showing up tonight and celebrating with poetry. I know Anna is excited to talk about her chapbook, which is out in a few days on the 15th, but like you might have heard me say earlier, if you pre-ordered, I'm already sending out books and stuff. So yeah, so if you haven't gotten yours in the mail, it should be in like, real soon. So all right, let's welcome Anna. Anna Morrison's poetry can be read in journals such as Bomb, Fence, Lana Turner, Interim, Puerto del Sol, and others. Her poems won the Lumina and Prism Review Poetry Prizes, and her critical prose has appeared in Omniverse. Passionate about small press publishing, she served as an editor for Kelsey Street Press and received an MFA in Creative Writing Poetry from St. Mary's College of California.
Hello, thank you, Levis. This is such a special experience, and I'm so grateful to Levis, who is my amazing editor and newfound for publishing this book, which I'm holding and which I know some of you also have on the way. And I'm really, really grateful to Chingy and Jose Luis for coming today and helping me celebrate. It really means so much. They're both poets that I admire a great deal and think the world of. So thank you to both of you. And thank you to all of you for coming to celebrate this book launch with me. This has been a challenging and exciting week. So I know that you probably had lots of other things you could be doing right now. And I'm really grateful that you have come to help celebrate this book. So Water in 3 Acts is this lovely book here. And I wrote it really kind of accidentally. I was just trying to write one poem. And I had this very strange experience of, being in a rush and being stressed and running late and knocking over a glass of water as I'm trying to run out the door. And doing that, it felt like this catastrophe had happened, which is ridiculous on some levels, but also not. And I was curious about that. I think that's the kind of experience that for a lot of poets and artists, you think, okay, there's something about this that's just ridiculous, but there's something about this that is accurate. And so I wanted to explore that. I wanted to think about how it is kind of this, almost like the hyperbole of anxiety, where you feel like you've done something that's the end of the world, but how it can also represent and link to anxieties and concerns that are profoundly valid, such as water as a resource on our planet and the implications of our individual actions. And so there was a lot there. And when I find something and I know there's a lot there, that's when I think about, okay, this is a poem. And at the same time, I was really thinking a lot about different poetic forms. I was getting my MFA at St. Mary's College of California, and I was in Brenda Hillman's class on poetic forms. So it was this kind of amazing opportunity of reading through lots of different approaches to poetry and really thinking what can come forward in these different forms. And for that reason, I decided I wanted to write a poem in 3 parts, and that I wanted the 3 parts to be very different forms. And the end result is this poem right here, which I call the frontispiece poem for the book. And it is, yes, a concrete poem, which basically is sort of looks like a carafe of sorts. And, you know, it has 3 very distinct movements. And I think I will start by reading this poem and then explain a little bit more about how this manuscript grew from that. Earth is a vessel to hold water, but water came from outer space, and I am clumsy. Does the black sea urchin scream, "Help me"? Goose skin passing over? Above my neck, 3 broken oars whisper, "Help." I believe what they tell me. Foam moans, "Give yourself over. You shall be poured soft, stiffened with care, compass lost." I am attractive in a carafe. Seen through glass, I trip upstairs. Angels caution, carry a full cup with care. I sway my body. There is no lid. The muscular eyes of critics throw courtesy morsels. Home is the mason jar where Satan sings which dress to wear. The kettle boils constantly. Boots ladle muddy puddles, ankles knocking. By awkward fingers, reluctant animals spill with me over the brim. There's water in space minerals. I invented sky, dispersed misfit hands. Casting my naked shoulder over the ocean boundary, I began the night. Dangle starfish, head uplift. Swallow salt. I possess reflexes of a rock. I wield microbial lives. Light and dust tentacles. I've chosen flotsam, our long engagement to the moon. I apologize to all the other animals. So after I wrote that poem, I was really just fascinated with doing as much reading and learning as I could about really just the history of the planet. And I should say that one of the other factors in writing that poem was sort of stumbling across this, you know, science fact of water came to Earth on asteroids. I just was like, why didn't I learn that in preschool? That seems really important. And the idea of water as being extraterrestrial, and that, you know, over early in the life of the planet, it was something that arrived, and that the planet kind of became a container for water. And I thought I want to explore this more. I think there's some wonderful people here who were in my MFA program with me, and they all know that I really, really like writing a poem and I hate starting a poem. So if I've got one, I will spend as much time in it as possible. And I was absolutely excited to do that. But I thought, how do you extend a concrete poem? You know, it's bounded by its shape. How can I find more here? How can I go deeper? And I just, you know, I was thinking about this for a long time. And then I just had the idea that if you thought about this concrete poem as being like a frontispiece to a book, that would be sort of one way of going about it. A frontispiece, if you, for anyone who is not familiar, is, you know, that the kind of image that you might find at the beginning of a book, which could sort of have something to say about the theme of the book, or it could also contain sometimes a frontispiece in a manuscript would actually show a miniature of the manuscript being presented to a patron. And that was kind of the idea that I really ran with, because I thought, okay, this one concrete poem that I've written is the miniature of the longer poem I'm going to write. And so in the sections that follow, there are 3 sections that kind of take the lead from the portion of the concrete poem that inspired them. And I thought today I would share with you some from the pour section. So these are these kind of dripping poems. And they are actually written in several different voices. And in my more ambitious moments, I was going to come up with all kinds of ways of sharing that with you. And then I just decided that I would read the poem and let you know that there are many voices speaking. We're hearing from oars and sea glass and urchins and foam. And this figure who is drowning is referred to as the soprano, because I was aware that this all was a little bit operatic. So I'm just going to read a couple of sections from Pour, and I hope you will enjoy it and be able to hear all of the different voices. Fall properly. Be a plank on the tongue. Infinity is an arm ushering you to dip. Dance the ship's skirts for darker suspension. Dear oars above my neck, a conch shell tears my lips. Some teeth stamp epidermis, even crab scratchings hiss. You are a gift. My limbs, napkins that tides position, cusp on cusp, floppy detritus. A wrist is just a hinge. Where is ballast? Oars, am I prey? Spewed by salt? A forehead brined on dazed rock. Nothing asks for you. I know what it feels like, quarantined from lineage of your teeth. True, shallow water might shield a body, but tumult licks unsteady. I am wet clay. None of my bones yet budge. Ruffian debris, you tried to saw through me. I don't think you understand. I need your help. Understand that Earth canters toward no names. Seawater spilled early to play with its urges. Amino acids surfed asteroids, water arriving drop by drop inside crystals of salt. Concentrate carbon. Quilting algae carpets, 3D printing skeletons and spongy cells. A musical pattern culminates in filter feeding. Background noise was extinction. Life lacked biting jaws. The movements were eel, scale on tea kettles, bacteria lords. Wait for an ear on either side, teeter in slime folds. Reflex and crammer fix dingy ratios, and the floor a mosaic, time tilted, and sky fire fussing temperature, and basalt sloping into beds. Leaks between planks first whispered help. After storm ennui puppets a corpse, her chignon loose to waves. Vulnerable coral loved and wanted to watch this mermaid go under. When she sinks, sands toast her innocence. Gray lips where once I was alone. What yields such wave sound as the wave sound? If you will help me with my coat, urchin spiny with laughter, if you will be good masters to teach me these gates. Submerged volcanoes create wave tongues with cheeks unshaven. You shall be poured soft, most awkward delicacy to nourish and drown you, to stir your ragged throat a tea. Has there always been deep blue? You shall be stiffened with care, or there would be a bruise. I drain. I hate solos. Kelp gropes here, reminding me of touch. Goose flesh swallows my temperature into a tub. I think the last, I'm going to read one more poem from what is actually the middle section of the manuscript, and these are all prose poems. And I was particularly inspired by prose poetry when working on this, because I thought the way that I finally came to understand a prose poem is to think of it as, you know, the text, the poetic text behaves like water. It takes the shape of its container. These poems are kind of going further into the idea of how in any experience, you know, our body is a kind of hyperlinked index of so many other things that we may or may not even remember. Stained glass virgins cast blue light on lengthy sermons. Reliable clocks and a tight chignon. Loose strands muddle liturgy. The muscular syllables of preachers throw chastity wafers. I am passive in a carafe. Sipping eyes. Behind my pew, an older boy traces bra straps through my sweater with his pencil eraser. It takes the carbon out of me. I might spill the Holy Ghost because I'm clumsy, even a choir gown percussing. When liquid volume grows too tall and taut, ruffles from the girl section move into the donation box. An ice bucket buys me a drink, buys me a proxy for lightning. Cubes slur and slip. Satan is a mason jar where sloshing is the dress I wear. A roiling boil takes clothes off me till I can't spy the ceiling. Creator, are you a sadist chemist? Stainless steel handcuffs? Parishioners gather in awkward hymns, giddy as shoulder puffs. They find the knobs on red doors, and then God must wake up. I was baptized in a font. When I look at minerals, I think, she has shoulders like the moon. A holy parasite excavates pure relics from my living body. A virgin thigh bone, a riot baton. Inside means pretending. Here's blue glitter for my Jonah diorama. He's still alive in there. Here's Play-Doh to play the whale. I know we're in a tank by the chiming in my stillness, by bells ladling snow into hymns. Thank you for listening to that. It is really wonderful to share some of this work with you.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thanks Anna, for sharing with us. I have questions. If anybody else has questions, about Anna's work, about all the poets that we heard from today, I'd like to spend, maybe like 10 minutes just chatting. If anybody has stuff to talk about. I think like one thing that I noticed for sure, like listening to all three of you read, I don't know how to phrase this, but like the sonic quality, like poets should always be concerned with stop using always, but just being concerned with the sonic quality of words. But I feel like all three of you aren't afraid to use words, like detritus and other words that we heard that they're not like narrative friendly words, maybe I might say, right? We've been thinking, Ching-In, when you're using that last poem that you read, where you have the sort of like repetition, the circle, right? And things are coming back again. Have a very distinct like ear for music, and using words that are very powerful. Anyways, is that something that you think? I just always like wonder about poets' processes, like, is that something that you're conscious of when you're writing, or this is just like what comes out? Anybody has anything to say about that?
That was for Chingy, right? Are you?
I'm just, yeah, I'm just talking. Anybody, really? Yeah.
I was gonna,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
was gonna ask Anna to talk about the three parts because that really reminds me of like a symphony or a movement of some sort of music. So I think that would be really lovely to hear your reflections or engagements.
Sure, I'd love to. I just wanted to say in response to Levis, I definitely I'm attracted to poetry that has a strong sonic aspect to it. That was what first attracted me to poetry. So even today in my reading, that is what excites me. So it's no coincidence that you see that in Chingy and Jose Luis. And I also just wanted to say quickly that I feel I'm very sad that we don't have a recording of Jose Luis, but I feel like that will make his reading all the more legendary because we will all talk about how amazing it was, but there will be like no record. But in response to your question, I think, I did just pull three out in the very beginning. They're going to be three parts. I'm going to try three forms. But then from there, it became a kind of obsession. And each of the three sections in the book has what I refer to as three scenes. And within those scenes, there are three kind of secret repetitions that are happening. For example, in the last section, each of the scenes has some kind of onomatopoeia happening three times. So there were so many threes that were kind of built in and knitted into the structure of the poem. And apart from it feeling, like a significant number, the Trinity, I think it was there. And maybe it was a sense of there's going to be a rhythm to this, there is going to be a pattern. And one of the reasons I'm really so grateful that Newfound published this chapbook is that if you read it, I think you'll see that it is literally bookended. It's not just a sequence of poems, it's kind of own contained unit. And this, I was working on a longer book manuscript, and this clearly didn't fit with anything else. It is so kind of knitted to the parts that hold it together that it feels like a strange afterthought to put it on to another work. So I don't know if that answers your question, Chingy, but the threes are big in the book.
We have a question from Stephanie. Anna, your poems seem to really engage the idea of containers and containment a lot. Can you say more about that interest in containment as it relates to your poetry here?
Yes, absolutely true. I mean, from the initial concrete poem of the carafe and the image of knocking over the water, I think I'm really fascinated with what on various levels and in various ways kind of holds us together. And part of that is fundamentally my interest in embodiment and, what is this whole weird experience I have of existing in a body, I'm thinking about that all the time. And so for me, that's a kind of fundamental container that I experience everything because of that. And at the same time, I'm aware of, the container of your family, of your relationships, of society, of your beliefs, of your country and your government. There's so many, our containers aren't just visible, many of them are invisible. And also, obviously, as a poet who is very interested in form, form is a container. So for me, containment is just everywhere. And thinking about what those structures are and how I need them, how I need structure in some ways, and also thinking about the ways in which I can perceive it really hurting me. And I can perceive structure as an oppressive force, and kind of being willing to look at it both ways and say, okay, there are moments where this is something that I feel supporting me. And there are other moments where I really do want to knock that damn glass over. Yeah.
Uh, Hi. I was attracted to your line about the carafe because it reminded me of a very famous poem by Gertrude Stein that talks about a carafe as a blind glass. So I was wondering about the role of constructedness, if it has any, in your very organic view of water and form.
Um, yes, I mean, I think that one of the amazing things about Gertrude Stein is that when you really start, I think you see her everywhere when you really start looking. So I had not consciously thought of that before, but I love it. For me, the tension between what has been structured, what has been built, and what we regard as organic is kind of a false dichotomy, because the plant that I have right over there on my bookcase that we would describe as, oh, it's growing organically. Well, it's in a pot and it is growing because of what's happening on the molecular level. And so I just see these things as so completely interconnected. And it's often whether something appears structured or whether something appears organic, it's how closely or how are we looking at it on a macro or micro level? Are we looking at it for a moment, or are we looking at it for longer? You know, that I think it's a question that I am engaged with all the time, even just in how I work. I will often sort of start very methodically gathering language, but then, you know, I have my process, but it's never the same. It's always responding to what's happening with the poem, what's happening with the text, what's happening with the language. And I need to be paying attention to that because that's what is trying to be grown. Yeah.
I heard the phrase that we come to a non-racialist future with Obama, a non-racist integrationist. You know, I mean, it was a dream. It turned out racism didn't die. So I was wondering about the apocalypticism of Jose Luis's poetry. Will apocalypticism pass, or is it still in our future? Your poetry is so strong and negative in that regard. Negative feeling.
Thanks for the question, Don. It's great to see you here. So, yeah, you know, it's funny. It is. Someone said it was negative. You know, entropic, I guess. But well, these were clearly written, you know, during the doldrums, as you can tell. And you know, there was a lot that was wrong in the atmosphere in terms of how we're ecologically thinking about ourself and our bodies in relation to what we're connected to the way we're connecting to each other. For these particular poems, it had a lot more to do. They're sort of extensions, I guess, in some ways of the more entropic aspects of the Place Discipline book and the first half, I would say. And it has a lot to do, I guess, with the understanding that there is a lot of individuation going on, and certainly in the kind of politics that is constantly being, you know, exchanged and traded on the airwaves, when it has to be a politics of someone who doesn't see themselves in the social sphere. They don't see themselves connected. They don't see themselves in the other and people who are other than them. And so it was this politics of comfort, of individual pleasures, you know, ensconced within the confines of one's own sort of myopia, you know, and you know, I kind of thought of it as a closed circuit television, right? In that way, where you're only seeing what you want to see or what you're comfortable with. And so I guess the negative aspects or the apocalypticism might be in that sort of St. John mode of being on Patmos or something, you know, like really in some sort of isolation and trying to understand what there is outside of all of the monitors and the screens and the screen cultures that we're constantly sort of inebriated by. You know, what is there out there? And usually I think as Anna says, I mean, this forms of containment as well, I guess you could say, right? But it is about forms of embodiment. And I think that's maybe what you're addressing as well, that a praxis of the body, a marshalling of the body, a kind of pluralization of the body and all of its potentials, you know, is really important. So especially in trying to redefine some kind of connection with the public sphere, with the social sphere, with instead of thinking of others as other, you know, to do something where there is deep compassion and empathy. But yeah, I mean, these were written during that moment. So I hope to, not to say that today everything's going to change. Obviously, that's ridiculous. But certainly that that there is a new horizon that has been set, a new sort of bar, and hopefully that there'll be more poetry along those lines. So, sorry, I don't know if I answered your question, but I was trying.
No, it's good. Thank you.
You use the word communitas. Would you subscribe to the possibility of a future communitas?
Yeah, it was part of the, sort of the readings I was doing, but yeah, it's something like that, you know. When I was in Oaxaca in Mexico, I felt something like that, or it might have been the pulque, I don't know, but certainly, but certainly there was a kind of an interlinking with con el pueblo, you know. You want to feel yourself in your pores in the streets and in the walls, you know. And so you know, it was something bordering on that kind of vision, but you know, I don't know, we'll see.
Are there specific texts that influence this book and these poems?
So many, but I think that honestly, I everything, all of the poetry that I'd read, I mentioned I was studying with Brenda Hillman at the time, and Brenda is such an inspiring poet in terms of not both appreciating and deeply being interested in form, but never being content with what's been handed to you and always sort of looking for new possibilities. And also I was just completely kind of going on a French symbolist and surrealist poetry bender. And I was really deep into that. And visually, there's a lot that's interesting there. So, you know, I was reading the book that I actually picked up and was showing the frontispiece from is a study on poetry and visual arts in 19th century France. So that was very much an influence on me when I was working. And thinking about the page itself, not just the lines of the poem. And I finally, I just was doing so much captivating reading in science. And that's still, that has been something that has fascinated me and interested me before and since. I read one of the books that was really quite influential. It's called, I noted it somewhere. Oh, right. Wonderful Life, The Burgess Shale by Stephen Jay Gould. And at one point, he hypothesizes that based on the number of mass extinctions that happened in the development of the planet and mass extinctions even of species that were extremely successful at the time, that really we had no reason to believe if the entire planet were to reboot or restart that Homo sapiens would happen, that really the particular path that had happened to arrive at our species could have just as easily been something completely different. It's far from inevitable. I just, those sort of thinking about that and thinking about the incredible variety of life beyond the human was important and humbling when I was working on this. Yeah.
Can I ask Anna what you're working on next? What's tacked on the wall behind you, maybe?
Sure. I recently finished a manuscript that was thinking a lot about, one of its concerns was religion and God in a Christian context. And this poem, I think, was maybe a little bit of a reaction about that, because I'm working on a long poem now, also a reflection of our present moment, which was just, the poem is called Lucifer Doesn't Know What to Do with Herself. And that's my current project on the poem board. And yeah. What about Ching-In and Jose Luis? What are your current projects?
I'm actually working a lot on breath as a unit, and thinking about the intersection of meditation, air quality, pollution, and I grew up with severe asthma, so thinking about those three intersections. Some of the work that I read tonight is probably part of that project, and I'm also really interested in improvisation and kind of like community response to beyond my own experience. So having books in the community kind of contribute their own data and then having that influence like what is shared.
Yeah, sounds amazing, Ching. And by the way, I loved your poems. Amazing. I was just, I guess one way to, what am I working on? I'm trying to understand. I mean, it's not as exciting as those two projects, but basically I was thinking more about what lyric means, especially under the pressures of information, like just the constant sort of flux and of information that we're now sort of always engaged in. And so what does lyric look like now, especially with words like, as Levis said, detritus and things like this, right? And this is actually something, we're all dealing with certain personal predilections, when it comes to how we structure our breath on the page. And for me, it was about a lot of the stuff that I was writing was around the time I was writing a dissertation. So Levis, you're spot on that. So how do you exorcise those elements, that detritus, right? So that you could get something as pure and as fine as what Ching-In was writing, as what Anna was writing. And so I'm very much engaged in that, trying to recover the lyric again for myself nowadays.
Amazing. Does anybody have any more questions? I feel like we did really great today, folks. Y'all were so, yeah, this was just very charged. It's exactly what we need right now. Spiritual take on.
I just want to say thank you one more time to Ching-In and Jose Luis and Levis and all of you for joining us.
Totally. Yeah, I think sometimes, like, again, with the Skype things, like we sometimes like forget that like we're all spending time together right now. We're all people who are making time for each other right now, and how special that is. So yeah, thanks everybody for being here. I will drop the link for Anna's book one more time. Thank you for y'all's support and again, spending time with us.